Hello, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kira Zeidelman. I'm a senior manager at NARUC Center for Partnerships and Innovation, and I want to welcome you to today's monthly webinar of the Gas Committee, also supported by the U.S. Department of Energy NARUC Natural Gas Partnership. So without further ado, I'm going to pass things over to Gas Committee Chairman, Commissioner Ethan Kimbrel, for a brief introduction of today's speaker. Chairman Kimbrel.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining the Committee on Gas's regularly scheduled meeting. We're excited to join in co-sponsoring this webinar with the U.S. Department of Energy NARUC Natural Gas Partnership. Commissioner Burman, as the chair of Natural Gas Partnership, I will yield the floor to you.
Oh, thank you so much, Chairman Kimbrel. Hello, my name is Diane Burman. I'm really excited to be here in this joint sponsorship. The natural gas, for those of you who don't know, the Natural Gas Partnership is one with NARUC and DOE. It was initiated in July 2020 following the successful NARUC-DOE Natural Gas Infrastructure Modernization Partnership, and its collaboration among state regulators, federal agencies, and other stakeholders to discuss things like natural gas pipeline leak detection and measurement tools and technologies, and cost-effective practices for enhancing pipeline safety, efficiency, and deliverability, and looking at things like methane emission detection technologies, renewable natural gas, and so much more. We're really excited today to have a really great substantive conversation on the European Commission and its methane strategy and what DOE is doing in this space. Since the partnership has begun, the new partnership in July 2020, every month we have done some activity, whether it was a webinar or putting out a substantive paper or being a part of the NARUC summit in November. We are going to also be, for February, Natural Gas Partnership will be co-sponsoring with the Committee on Gas a number of different panels as well. Now I'm going to turn it back over to Chairman Kimbrel, who can introduce our wonderful speaker today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Commissioner Burman. Our speaker today is Shawn Bennet. Shawn currently serves as the Deputy Assistant Secretary for Oil and Natural Gas at the U.S. Department of Energy, where he administers oil and gas programs, including research and development, analysis, and natural gas regulation. Prior to joining the DOE, Shawn served as the Executive Vice President for the Ohio Oil and Gas Association, where he oversaw all federal and state legislative and regulatory activities in Columbus, Ohio, and Washington, D.C. Before his move to the Ohio Oil and Gas Association, Shawn was the Director of Strategic Communications for FTI Consulting, where he worked with business leaders, elected officials, and residents in Eastern Ohio and Pennsylvania regarding safety and economic benefits of oil and gas exploration. Shawn has more than a decade of experience in public affairs and government relations in the coal, oil, and gas industries, so he brings a wealth of knowledge to us. Shawn, the floor is yours, sir.
Hey, thank you very much. And Kira, are you driving the slides here today?
Yes, we are.
Oh, okay. Yes, I'm on the road. Not driving. I'm pulled over. I'm at a wonderful overlook. So yeah, kind of really, as we kind of think about the methane strategy and really what the kind of engagement with the EU, I just want to kind of go over a quick summary of what we have participated in and what we're looking forward to here over the next several months and years and so forth. But really we look at what's going on in the EU, European Commission, and their methane strategy, and what that methane strategy and initiatives are going to mean for the natural gas suppliers. Ultimately, they're looking at carbon adjustment border taxes and so forth. So, they're looking at, really that emissions profile that a lot of U.S. companies, as well as other countries around the world, when they are supplying them with their natural gas, and really how does that natural gas flaring play into that, and really how does DOE-led research really look to address those issues. And then really, one thing that we've been highlighting with them, and it's very important, are a lot of these voluntary industry initiatives and public-private partnerships. We do have exemplary public-private partnerships with the EPA, with the Natural Gas STAR voluntary program, the Methane Challenge voluntary program, and really those are the two really highlighted, featured partnerships that we have that are really kind of addressing these problems that are percolating more and more in the European Commission. And on the next slide, really we look at this, as a critical opportunity. This is a conversation that has been going on. It's not brand new. This is a conversation they've been leaning towards this direction here for the past several years. And really, what the European Commission has indicated is that, they are addressing energy-related methane emissions, and it will be part of Europe's commitment to reaching that climate neutrality by 2050. So, right now you have the European Commission discussing, calls for legislation in 2021 to require EU companies to, report their energy-related methane emissions and repair leaks on natural gas infrastructure. And really considering whether that, legislation would be later this year would require, natural gas suppliers to the EU to kind of disclose and meet those emissions reductions goals. So, they're looking internally and around the European Commission participating countries, and they're also looking externally. It's not just about supplying a low emission fuel from, internally in the European Union, but also, is that going to be, methane friendly natural gas if it is coming to the country, whether it be Russia, United States, or even Australia or Qatar, and really look at that UN Environment Program and how they're working with the European Commission on that on International Methane Observatory. And really this observatory, when created, will have the ability to collect, reconcile, verify, and publish anthropogenic methane emissions data at a global level. So they're really looking at this as not just the European Commission participating within this program, but really a global initiative to see, what are those methane emissions outside of the or from the energy-related industries as well as others as well. And again, when we saw that and having this conversation, DOE, we led several calls with the European Commission. Actually, just recently this week, we also sat down with Ireland to discuss LNG. And I wanted to make sure, and again, really are reaching out here over the past several months, is really to start engaging with the European Commission to ensure that any proposed emission quantification frameworks that affect suppliers are transparent and of high quality. Next slide, please. But, as I mentioned earlier on that last slide, they do have these plans for the International Methane Observatory. So this is going to be that International Methane Emissions Observatory that will provide consistency amongst several programs. So, again, it's about challenging, cooperating company reports. So, think about the ESG reports of the companies both here and abroad, and really kind of updating those core methodologies, kind of finding uniformity and publishing those aggregated company results. So really trying to fit everything into a circular framework to get a holistic viewpoint of what, methane emissions are going to be moving forward. Next slide, please. So, what does that mean, to the United States? And, again, 10 years ago, it would not be significant. But, here today, with our expansion in LNG exports, we recognize that, Europe is going to be, or is currently, the second largest market for U.S. LNG exports. And so despite the current economic downturn stemming from the pandemic, Europe is going to continue and continues to be a very strong importing region. So any future limitations on the European market are going to have significant consequences on not just the U.S. LNG market, but also the natural gas markets here in the United States. As we've seen this large growth that has taken place here domestically, a lot of that demand, now up to about 10 billion cubic feet a day, is or capacity in the United States, about 9.5 BCF a day export, is really met with that international demand, and we're going to continue to see that grow. So, when we look at this methane strategy, it really does call for discussions with the importing regions and adopting common standards. And, we're going to see that moving forward. And, and if you kind of look at what's happening in Europe, if Europe starts implementing these standards, what other countries are going to implement similar standards. So, when we want to look at that, we have to make sure that we're part of that conversation. But, other regions are already taking some of their own actions. If you want to look back to just November of 2020, Pavilion Energy signed a first green LNG agreement with Qatar Petroleum Trading Company for LNG supplies to Singapore. So, this agreement requires a statement of greenhouse gas emissions for each cargo. So, you're starting to see people move in that trend. And we want to make sure that when we're having these discussions, that it's not the pictures of flaring that they see on, pick a newspaper that they may see regarding West Texas and Permian. That the United States is addressing our emissions significantly, and we continue to do better. Next slide, please. And so in these discussions, and we have the European Commission, it was really telling our story. And I do believe that we have a great story to tell. As you know, we do a lot of life cycle analysis studies, and we work with the US EPA greenhouse gas inventory. And it is very important to tell the story that, really only, less than 1.1%, there is less than 1.1% emission rate from extraction through distribution. And, showing them this graph is, really we're looking at, the life cycle of natural gas from the production, processing to distribution and transportation, and then down to distribution. And, we are currently identifying, a lot of those large offenders. And, I credit the work that the life cycle analysis has provided, along with the work with the US EPA greenhouse gas inventory, because that also really informs, the projects that we look at from the Department of Energy standpoint in our quantification and mitigation portion of the office. So, again, given the life cycle, we have addressed a lot of those concerns in production and gathering. We continue to do better all the way through the transmission and storage. So really the next slide really tells the story of how well we've done over the past decade. You continue to see a steady decline in methane emission intensity in the United States in the natural gas sector, from the year 2000 to 2018. And that's really with that advent of shale development that we've seen. And, one thing that we'd like to continue to, remind everyone is that, what happened with shale development wasn't just an increase in production, but it was an increase and really an updating of our regulatory structure. Again, when we were seeing oil and gas industry on a significant decline, a lot of those regulations may have been outdated. And then when you brought in, and when we did bring in larger scale shale development and this more manufacturing process, it really brought up, some of the regulations to meet today's standards. And we continue to see a significant growth in production while we continue to trend downwards on our methane emissions. Next slide. And really, this really goes into that reporting and voluntary initiatives that I mentioned earlier. When you look at the Natural Gas Star voluntary program, it tracks the program progress and really recognizes the partners' efforts to reduce methane emissions. And even the Natural Gas Star program, again, there were specific, ambitious commitments and provided transparent reporting and company level recognition for their participation. And that's really important when you think about, what we've been able to accomplish here. And so, when we talk about, the floor, I like to call it, while, the standards, while the life cycle analysis methane emission rate is about less than 1.1%, there are companies that are going the extra mile, coalitions that are going the extra mile to lower that methane emission as much as possible. And this is really a narrative that they had not heard and really been educated on in the European Commission. And it's very important to kind of get out some of those programs and initiatives that we have here in the United States that, when they think about United States oil and gas, all they think about is the oil or the flaring in West Texas. Next slide, please. And, really the conversations started leading into, what is, natural gas flaring, and where does the United States fall in? And, it is of great concern with the European stakeholders. But, what the Department of Energy is doing is to really work to educate, stakeholders on U.S. record for U.S. Flaring intensity. If you think about, where the representative large natural gas producing areas are, it is in Appalachia when we've seen that growth of natural gas flaring. However, there is that, I'm sorry, not natural gas flaring, natural gas production. However, there is this misconception that there is significant flaring in the United States, and it is almost specifically a United States problem. And so, when we do have these conversations, it is upon us to really discuss about, it's 4 nations alone who are responsible for half of the oil and gas flaring, with Russia being the largest flaring country, and other sources being Iran and Iraq, and then in fourth, the United States. But, we are addressing our flaring intensity and really looking at, building out that pipeline capacity and taking away or putting together that significant takeaway infrastructure and outlets like the Permian, and that are coming online here in 2020 and through 2022. And really, if you think about over the past 5 years, just in the Permian alone, or Texas alone, they've put in about $50 billion of pipeline projects just to get a lot of that takeaway capacity put into place. But then it is also important to, having these conversations is, there isn't flaring really in Ohio outside of, safety reasons. Pennsylvania, West Virginia, these are natural gas producers. And so when they think about really where our natural gas is coming from, this is not an issue that's typically going to be an issue for U.S. LNG, minus some of the pipelines coming out of the Permian as well. Next slide, please. And this one was really the aha slide, I think, for our conversations with the European Commission, because when you think about natural gas flaring intensity, and that is, how much flaring per the volume, the largest offending countries, definitely when you see the United States being the third, we're not really even in, the top 10. And so, while we are getting most of the kind of criticism here, again, you can look at places like Russia, Iraq, Libya, Nigeria, Algeria, and so forth, really are those larger flaring intensity countries. So, it's very important to kind of create a level set of what you see with flaring in other parts of the world, because, as the European Commission continues to have this conversation about methane, it is about making sure that they're not unfairly penalized in the United States, who has really done a great job at addressing methane emissions here over the past 15 years, kind of that slide from here, several before. But, the other thing that we like to point out is that, when you think about regulations, we are the only country in the world who does point source calculation, quantification. So, when you think about the LDAR programs that are in each respective state, most other countries really rely on just an emissions factor, and they plug it in. And so, while we are considerably low, we are also by far the most accurate when we look at our methane detection. Next slide, please. And, I like to mention that because that how we are aggressive in our methane leak detection also, informs our office of where to look and what issues we need to address. If you look at, Christopher Freitas is on the line, in our midstream program, we have $18 million for research programs on methane emissions mitigation, leak detection, and sensing technology. And we always look to how do we better quantify these methane emissions from, natural gas compressor station, gas storage operations, and even marginal natural gas wells, and help to inform the EPA greenhouse gas inventory. But, one thing that I think, we should be proud of and be on the forefront, and there are many things I think we should be proud of at DOE, especially in the Office of Oil and Gas, regarding addressing methane. But, the one that I think is new and really the most novel that we've done so far is the methane emissions quantification testing site that is in Colorado. We recognize that, as technology evolves, as it gets better and, new ideas and tools are out there, we have to make sure that they have a place where they can be tested, verified, quantified, and then being able to have a sign-off to really, not a sign-off, but, to be used so they can get these tools into the private sector and make sure they're utilized. And so that's what we have being created in Colorado State, and that's really a very interesting program of how we're addressing that. Or even our RPE program with the $33 million they've put into their repair program, which, looks to reduce natural gas leaks from distribution pipes, kind of the old wrought iron steel pipes, and look at enabled construction of new pipe inside of existing pipe. And that was funded here last year, and really a unique way at addressing, a problem that plagues a lot of the older communities. And then also, again, the DOE-NARUC partnership. I mean, that is something that we continue to highlight, and it's very important to show that we continue to be on the forefront of addressing methane emissions. And really, that stakeholder outreach, it remains key. That is that One Future coalition and others that really want to pursue those voluntary actions. And one thing, next slide, please. And really, one thing that we've highlighted with them, with the European Commission, and I think that is going to have continued traction, is really the great work that the National Energy Technology Laboratory has done here over the past decade or so. I mean, if you go back to just the 2014 LNG report, life cycle analysis, and our recent update, that is going to be very helpful to the European Commission, and they did signal that when we had our conversations, I should say, that they were unaware of these studies, and we want to make sure that they saw them and really looked at the comparison between regional coal that would be burned in their localities, or other LNG, whether it's coming from LNG from Algeria, or also comparative natural gas from Russia. Next slide, please. And then with that, you look at the study results, and you continue to see a benefit from U.S. LNG, especially when you look at regional coal consumption and looking at again the benefits that you do have, and through the 100-year time horizon, all natural gas scenarios, whether it is us, Algeria, or Russia, have lower GHG emissions than coal. And again, you also see kind of that variability in natural gas processing, power plant efficiency. These things that are variables that will continue to increase and show those benefits. But as you look at this in both the 100-year global warming potential and the 20-year, when you think about that energy transition that's happening in Europe, they have to have natural gas to meet those needs, and you do continue to see a very important and very significant reduction in greenhouse gas emissions than coal use. Next slide, please. So when we look at the study, it shows that U.S. LNG use in Europe would result in a 23% to 56% less greenhouse gas emissions than regional coal use for power productions. And one thing that we have recognized, and we continue to discuss with them is, NETL study, can help inform policymakers, and, their work is going to help policymakers, provide more comprehensive analysis of upstream emissions, again, the transparent estimates of methane emissions during pipeline transportation. This is what the NETL study and really the United States regulatory framework provide. And, while the European Commission has looked at other studies and, other countries are putting forward, information, a lot of these studies and a lot of this information, do lack the transparency that we have in the United States. And that is very important to continue to discuss as we move forward. So, next slide, please. So what is the path forward with the EU? Again, this effort was led by the Office of Fossil Energy, the Office of Oil and Natural Gas, and then the National Energy Technology Laboratory, with assistance from, the U.S. Department of State and the Environmental Protection Agency. So, when we started the initial conversations, they reached out to really seek expertise. And, well, they wanted to understand our position, and they wanted to understand our regulatory structure. And they also wanted to make sure that they avoided the disruption of transatlantic LNG trade. And that is something that, they reiterated on several times. So we did agree to continue on conversations while my time has and conversations have ended. The office will continue to move forward in that direction with really continuing on briefings by U.S. experts, for the European Commission on topics of their interest. So, currently we have scheduled methane emissions quantification life cycle analysis webinar seminar with the National Energy Technology Laboratory. So I know Tim Scone and his team will do a great job really explaining the life cycle analysis of the natural gas systems. And then, further on conversations talking about, with the EPA on the greenhouse gas inventory, and then starting to talk to U.S. state regulators, because a lot of the regulations are, again, governed by the states. And that is something that, while they look at federal regulations, it's really the states where things get done, and better understanding of, again, the geology, the topography, the population density, the whole gambit of, what is important when, state regulators are involved, and talk to them about their best practices. So with that, I will conclude my PowerPoint presentation, but I am always an open book and more than happy to answer any questions that you all may have.
Thank you, Shawn. So I'll encourage our audience to submit questions, and I'd be happy to read those out for Shawn to address. I guess if I could start with one of my own, I know there was a mention, I think, in one of the earlier slides about satellite methane sensing, and there was some news this week about the Methane SAS project that aims to launch in 2022. Could you talk a little bit about the importance of satellite methane sensing and what the department has done to try to further that technology?
Yes, we've worked on that here in years past. We don't currently have anything in the hopper. However, we continue to talk with others. The issue with satellites are they're expensive, so you have to kind of rent space on them. But I think as we continue to see new technology being developed with satellites and them getting smaller and being able to really calculate, our partnership and getting that quantification is going to be very important. Now, satellites get a snapshot currently, really just a snapshot of the atmosphere of what's going on at that time. And it's imperative upon us to really make sure that we're able to separate, where the emissions are coming from, being able to pinpoint, because accuracy is really the most important thing that we can get to when we think about emissions quantification and verification. To get a snapshot of an area that may be anthropogenic methane, from well site or so forth, or just naturally occurring from seeps and so forth, it is, or if it's being blown down from another field, we need to make sure that we isolate it, and we need to make sure that we pinpoint it and kind of fingerprint it, because at the end of the day, we need to know which wells are coming from, and we want to make sure that we're getting a very accurate reading, so we know what we need to look at to correct it. So, I think there's a lot of great technology that is being developed on that, and we're going to continue to work with them, throughout our labs. But we have to really ensure that accuracy is taking place. And I think right now, kind of, being on site or drone technology is far more accurate than what we're seeing with satellites. But again, it's a very new industry that we need to continue to develop.
Thank you. And I'm not seeing any questions come through the chat here, so I will give a minute for audience members to think of any questions, or if our Committee on Natural Gas Partnership leadership has any questions or comments before we go to our closing slides. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, if you have, this is Diane Burman, wondering if you have any thoughts on specifically the International Energy Agency, which is going to be working with the European Commission and the United Nations on folks. If you have a specific focus on what regulators should be focused on with IEA and some lessons learned from the U.S., in Europe.
Well, we've worked very well with IEA here over the years, and greatly respect those individuals. Now, they definitely have a very large group that they have to manage, and so as much information as we can get into them, and the better we can work with them is very important. I think it's clear in our work in our discussion with the European Commission that they want our help, and they encourage it, and they just I feel like we needed to engage earlier than we did, and I'm glad we did start engaging here several months ago. But I think it's very important to kind of share that information with them because, again, at the end of the day, the United States, in general, all the states, collective states, regulatory structures are really, I think, more transparent and aggressive than a lot of our European neighbors, so forth. So I think there is a lot to learn and a lot to educate them on.
Great, thank you.
Shawn, this is Ethan Kimbrel. You mentioned this independent field test site in Colorado. I'm not sure if what we'll be dealing with in July, but the next NARUC meeting after February is supposed to be in Denver, Colorado. What would be the likelihood that we could actually visit that test site if we're out there at that time?
Well, I know somebody who knows people over there that may be on the call, Christopher Freitas. And so, I think that is something very cool that, as it progresses, to get some individuals out there. I think it's, something I'm very proud that we were able to kind of put together and really build off, some of the RPE work that was taking place at that time prior to us taking over the site. And, again, I think the more people that know about it, the better. So I will leave it in Christopher's hands to get you guys out there.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Shawn.
Hi, Shawn. This is Andreas Thanos. I have a question. It may be more of like a monologue than a question, but we'll work with that. As you have been talking to the EU folks, and I look at data, and primarily I was looking at slide, I believe, 7 of your presentation, the one that has the methane emissions and the withdrawals of natural gas withdrawals. And it's something that the industry has been trying recently to showcase the reduction in emissions and in methane emissions. But, and I've looked at data in regards to our coal emissions, which are declining in the United States. But the EU, I find it a little bit, I don't know, cynical or funny in a strange way, that the EU still burns lignite in certain instances. Even Germany does. How can they, with a straight face, start talking about the United States methane emissions and intensity? Because I've seen that they have been talking. They just canceled the cargo with what is it, Angie? A couple of months ago.
Angie.
Yeah, blaming us for our extraction policies when approaches when they themselves are not necessarily the cleanest economies. And I read today the economic and national security impacts under a hydraulic fracturing ban that was published by the DOE a few days ago. And it's amazing how all these things play together, and how do we tell the EU partners, and as you very well know, with the GTF, the India GTF, our Asian partners, that hey, our gas is good and the whole world will benefit from it. How do we send this message across?
That's really the key. And thank you for reading the ban on hydraulic fracturing report. That was I got that on my desk in October of this year, and said you have 75 days to complete it. So very very happy that somebody's enjoying it. But
yeah, I'm a little different. Yes.
Yeah, but these are the conversations that we had, and it's about that transparency. And I think as these conversations that we have with them, is they have to look internally. They have to accurately start quantifying their emissions, whether it is through burning, just that lignite coal. It's prevalent in Ireland and all the way through a lot of the countries in Europe, and coal production. But also, if they're going to penalize us or they want us to do better, well, we should not be penalized for being the most accurate country in the world. I'll put Canada up there as well, because they also do a lot of leak detection at the site. For being more accurate, in the other countries like Algeria or Russia, plug a number in and they say, well, those are our emissions, and they don't have the verification. And I think that's why it's important, in those conversations with the European Commission, whether it's at the state level or the federal level, is, don't penalize us for being the most accurate. However, we will assist you in helping regulate those where you're receiving gas, or also trying to verify your own emissions. Because it seems like I don't want to get in a position to where, look at how much we've reduced the emissions, and then they try to box us in as same as another country who haven't had these significant reductions, and try to give us a percentage goal. So until we get a better idea of the leak detection rate in those other countries, from the wellhead to burner tip or flange of the natural gas, once we're able to start identifying them, we can help with them, and then we can look at reduction. However, I think this is kind of what you're saying. We need to get everybody on the same page with this, because, this isn't about my personal opinion. We aren't here to make sure that, we're going to see less U.S. production in these conversations with the EU. If you're addressing the authentic concern of reducing methane emissions globally, we have to all work together. We have to get a better idea of what the other countries are doing, and then once they get down to our standards, then we can collectively work at getting better together.
That's right. Yeah, that'll be difficult, but that's the only way to.
It's not going to be easy.
Yeah, that's the only way.
Yeah, and that's why going back to Commissioner Burman's conversation, I think that's there's involved, is that if we don't give them data, they're going to give us homework and say you have to meet X, Y, and Z, without fully recognizing how much prep work we've done to get to this place in our emissions profile. And we have a lot of we have a lot of guidance to give them, and once we can get them down, then we can collectively work together to address the larger methane problem. Not to say there isn't homework for us to do in the meantime too.
Yeah, but in the meantime, while you were responding, I was seeing papers and presentations at conferences. That's a topic. Thank you, Shawn.
Yep.
Thank you again, Shawn. So if there are no further questions for Shawn, we have a couple of closing slides. So Will, if you could go to the second to last slide with the committee panels for the NARUC Winter Policy Summit coming up in a few weeks. And I just want to thank Shawn again for being so generous with his time and joining us for not only today's webinar, but several of our past discussions as well. So he's always an excellent guest speaker. So Shawn, thank you very much on behalf of NARUC. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Chairman Kimbrel to talk about some highlights from the Winter Policy Summit agenda for the Committee on Gas. Commissioner Kimbrel.
Kira, I was actually unaware that I was going to give any highlights on that. I was just going to thank Shawn and the Department of Energy and the Natural Gas Partnership and everyone from the Gas Committee who joined us this afternoon, and remind everyone that in lieu of the NARUC Summit in February, our next Gas Committee call will take place in March. But perhaps Commissioner Burman will be able to fill us in on that.
Thank you. Well, we're really excited to be looking forward to the February NARUC Winter Policy Summit. As you can see from the slide, it really runs the gamut with decarbonization, pipeline safety, looking at resiliency, and then focusing on LNG, which is a three-part series, and international issues and climate policy. I would direct your attention to go to the NARUC website and look at the agenda, because we have a really full agenda. What's really good about this also is that we really are pulling in other committees, not only the Committee on Gas with Chair Kimbrel, but also International Committee, and we hope to have the Consumers and Public Interest, as well as the Critical Infrastructure. And the Natural Gas Partnership is also co-sponsoring a number of those those panels as well. So we're really excited. We're really excited also that some of the panelists that will be coming will be showcasing some of their focus on what they're doing for 2021 in the natural gas space as we move forward, and how it interconnects with renewables. So thank you very much. And thank you. I want to say a very big thank you to Shawn for always being such willing to come and speak to the Committee on Gas and the Natural Gas Partnership. And with that, I think we're ready to say thank you and making sure everybody signs up for the Winter Policy Summit.
Thanks very much. Have a good weekend, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Everyone, thanks again.